Nana Shastra Vicharanaikanipunam Sadharma Sanghastapakam Lokanang Hitakarinam Tribhuvane Mannam Saranyam Nana Shastra Vicharanaikanipunam Sadharma Sanghastapakam Lokana.
Kumagyanatmirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Adunulambito Bujo Kanakabhatatu Sankirtanaya Kapitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dvijabaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gurudai Pushpavanto Chitra Sangdo Tamamuno Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhayo Charano Sako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subalapriyo Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye.
Should go to Vaishnav Guru Parampara ki Jai. Anantakota Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai. Shri Kartik Vrat ki Jai. Damodara-Lila ki Jai. Glorious devotees. Thank you so much for joining again our discussion on the Damodara-Lila. We will continue where we left off in the last presentation. Just a reminder, at this point in the presentation, we are reading from the Gopal Champu of Srila Jiva Goswami, wherein the narration of the Leela, the Damodar activity, the binding of Lord Krishna by his mother, is related to the residents of Goloka. And accompanying this reading from the Gopal Champu, we are also drawing from the commentaries on the Srimad Bhagavatam section in the 10th canto dealing with the same Damodara-Lila. So it's a two-branched approach, allowing us to get some specific insights into the feelings of the major figureheads in our sampradaya in regards to this Damodara-Lila. And through this narration, you will see that there are some discrepancies between one description and another, between one acharya's viewpoint or another, or an acharya is bringing out a specific aspect of the Leela in a way that may not have been brought out by another acharya. This is the nature of bhava, and different revelations are coming to those who are entering into the mysteries of all of Krishna's Leelas, and they are so kind as to share those with us. And this is our gateway into deep devotional understanding. We are aspiring to attain spiritual perfection by the process of Raganuga Bhakti. We want to follow in the footsteps of those who are directly participating in the Lord's Leela. And it's a process of das, anudas, that everyone within the circle of Krishna's intimate associates sees themselves as a servant of the overall enjoyment of Krishna. Now, in Vraj Lila, it's extremely unique in that the godhood of the Supreme Personality is not at all taken into consideration by his most intimate associates. It does come up from time to time in different circumstances, but it only arises, the Aishvarya of Krishna being the Supreme Lord, the various Shaktis of the Lord who are constantly in service of his ultimate pleasure. They arise only in Vraj Bhakti, where they are serving the loving exchange between the Lord and his most associates there. So in that land, every particle is in service to Krishna's ultimate enjoyment in loving relationship with his devotees. The land itself, the trees, the narration, the way the great sadhus and acharyas who have some real insight into the nature of the Supreme Lord have relayed this to us. Gives us a picture of a transcendental realm wherein everything is bowing down and making an offering to Krishna. But in Vraj, all of that servitude is done in such a way that the Lord is allowed to fully focus his pleasure on those loving relationships. Whereas other manifestations of the Supreme Lord in other locations, there is much give and take between the worshiped and the worshiper. Please. So this is very unique now, coming into the 10th canto, the heart of the Srimad Bhagavatam, being invited by these various acharyas, beginning with Srila Vyasadeva himself, who has given us this Purana, then specifically our Gaudiya acharyas, who hold such a unique perspective on the Bhagavat Purana as a primary praman, the primary praman in relationship to the transcendental reality, and specifically this perspective of serving the Lord selflessly, of serving the Lord simply for his ultimate enjoyment. So we have, through the various Lila narrative up to this point, been given a glimpse into these kind of loving exchanges. And of course, there is a sound groundwork upon which Lila transpires of spiritual knowledge, sambandha gyan, the proper conceptual orientation regarding the Lord and his various potencies and his various expansions. And even when we talk about loving exchanges, the loving exchanges themselves, our sampradaya is giving a very unique perspective. We're simply amazed when we look at a presentation like Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. What a gateway into understanding loving affairs with the Lord. And fortunately for us, we have the good fortune of being able to see into these topmost loving exchanges through the lens of Srimad Bhagavatam into a holy Dham, Vraj, and the residents there. And it's something that we can easily relate to. It's human-like. It's not human, but it's human-like. And the transcendental spiritual emotion exchanged between the Lord and his most intimate associates is human-like, but it's not like anything that we have experienced here under the influence of the Lord's external potency. So we're sitting in the middle ground, tatasta, and it's a very unique position we're in now, because we have been completely immersed and subdued by the Lord's external potency since time immemorial. And due to some magnificent good fortune, now we're able to turn our consciousness from that external engagement with the Lord's inert potency, Maya, and turn our consciousness towards his internal potency. Gain a glimpse there of something that we're somewhat familiar with from our experience within the Lord's external energy. So it's quite a unique opportunity that the acharyas are providing to us. They're giving us this gateway into the most intimate association with the Lord. And what we see there is something that looks familiar to what we're already acquainted with. We're acquainted with a mother's love for their child. We're acquainted with a friend's love for a friend. We're acquainted with the love between the intimate love of young adolescents as they're coming into the most unique period of experience in life. So we're somewhat acquainted with this. And we think we have an idea of what is love. And then in order to enhance our understanding of the distinction between the love that we're acquainted with and the loving exchanges in the transcendental realm, we have someone like Srila Rupa Goswami allowing us entrance into, well, if we look at love and we look at the feeling of love, if we look at what actually are all the components of love, and we see how those components interact and give the deepest appreciations in loving exchange, it's somewhat overwhelming, just the theology of it. So during this unique period of Kartik, not only are we overwhelmed by the theology, but we're brought in to the intimacy and given a glimpse. So let us continue with the narration of the Lila, coming through the pen of Srila Jiva Goswami and portrayed through the lips of Snigdha, who is speaking to the residents of Raj and relating this pastime to them. So I believe we left off here. We'll start here. There should not be too much duplication, I don't believe. So Snigdha continues the narration. When Mother Yaśodā went to take the milk off the stove for the pleasure of her son, she first comforted him, saying, "My darling son, may all your problems and difficulties come to me. Watch this part of yogurt for just a minute while I check on the boiling milk. I will return quickly." Ah, just as swiftly as she put her son aside and left that churning place, she returned. Even in that time, milk poured from her breasts with deep motherly affection, wetting her blouse. It poured so much that it made the floor slippery. Still, Sri Krishna's wishes had been checked, and he was most perturbed. In anger, he bit his trembling, reddish lips and burst into tears. Then, picking up a small grinding stone, which was lying nearby, he broke the pot of half-churned yogurt. However, he did not even get the slightest bit of butter from it. In the commentary in this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, both Srila Jiva Goswami and Sanatana Goswami bring out the fact that these tears, although the Lord is very clever and he uses his emotions in different ways in dealing with his eternal associates to his advantage. In this particular instance, both these commentators point to this trembling of his reddish lips and his bursting into tears as a true display of emotion on his part. So we need to recognize, and we do recognize, that the Lord is engaged in his transcendental Lila. But his Lila is a real representation of his and his most intimate associates' spiritual emotion. So sometimes, of course, Krishna's emotions are just a show in order to embellish the loving relationships. And sometimes they are real. So I know it would seem natural for us when looking to the godhood of God and the nature of the Supreme Lord to think that all of his play in Vraj and all of the Lila that transpires there is simply a show for the pleasure of his devotees. But it's much deeper than that. It's not a show for the pleasure of his devotees. It's an entering into an intimate, loving relationship with his purest devotees who reside there. And in entering into that relationship, he himself, his awareness of his Aishwarya, his awareness of his omnipotence and omnipresence, this recedes to the background even for him. So we should take care not to look at the Leelas of the Lord and especially his Vraj Leela, these Leelas with his most intimate associates, and think that he's just play acting. No, this is his real life. His real life is this inner life of love with his devotees in Vraj. This is who he is. This constitutes his ultimate reality. And yes, he is the Supreme Lord. And yes, he has unlimited potencies. And yes, the entirety of all creation resides within his belly. And yes, he's bigger than anything that one could imagine. And we could not bind him around the circumference of what is the entirety of his position as the be all and end all of all that there is. It's truly cannot be bound, but his love and that emotion of love between him and his associates, yes, that falls into a different category where we see that his various Shaktis recede to the background and only come up and execute something in relationship to his divinity when they can serve the love between he and his associates there. The narrative continues. Just then his eyes caught sight of a pot of fresh butter hanging from the ceiling in the adjoining room. He ran to the door, slid the latch aside, and pushed it open. Then, moving the door stopper back into place, he slipped into the room and closed the door behind him. He used a nearby cot as a step, lowered the pot of butter, and started to eat it. Thereafter, he took the remaining butter and secretly sneaked out through the window of that room. The aerial voice, I've not taken the entire narrative, but just select portions. Now we have Mother Yaśodā coming back, and this is how Jiva Goswami, through the lips of Snigdha relates what she experienced. So this is Jiva's rasa tattva, his entering into the Leela and revealing an aspect of it for our good fortune. An aerial voice said to Mother Yaśodā, feeling hungry and thirsty, a bumblebee made a hole in the bud of a lotus flower that had no pollen. When he saw that it was merely water that began dripping from that flower, he became disappointed and went to another lotus flower where he has found a big supply of honey. The import is that in order to get fresh butter, your son performed all these deeds. He first broke the churning pot, but did not find butter there. He then found it hanging in the next room. If we look at this narration, it's quite amazing because we can see that we're familiar in our own environment and in our own mind of such internal conversation with our mind. Mind is always offering this alternative and that alternative and telling us to do this or to do that in this circumstance or that circumstance. The dialogue sometimes seems unending between ourselves and our mind, who, depending on the level of our conditioning, we actually think that's me. But really, it's just a filter through which we're experiencing the Lord's various the various aspects of his external potency. And as we enter into spiritual life, some glimpse into the internal potency as it itself becomes spiritualized. So in regards to the external potency, it can be a great enemy. But in regards to the internal potency, we used in that regard, as Krishna told Arjuna on the battlefield, it can be your best of friends. So here, though, in Vraj, we see Mother Yaśodā is not experiencing the way we experience according to Swan's insight. Rather, she's hearing an aerial voice. So the aerial voice is saying to her and explaining to her what we would think, well, this is what she surmised in her mind. But no, an aerial voice is actually relating this to her. And it gives us a unique insight into the nature of the consciousness that pervades the spiritual reality. Here, there's matter, and there's our interaction with that matter. So there's gross and there's subtle. So that interaction is between what we observe in the gross world and how our subtle mind, intelligence, and false identification of self perceives things. But there, in this transcendental realm, everything is spiritual. So everything is working together and nourishing these loving relationships. So even the air, the air that's pervading that atmosphere itself can relate a narration to Mother Yaśodā. The narration continues. You have displayed your intelligence by deciding to leave your baby and go cool down the milk. But if you can calm the anger of your child, you will receive even more praise. Upon hearing the aerial voice, Mother Yaśodā laughed and followed the thief's conspicuous yogurt footprints to the next room. She managed to force the doors open, and she stepped inside, only to behold her son's other matchless mischief. Tracing his path of escape, she finally spotted him, his eyes restless with fear. Mother Yaśodā saw him sitting restless-eyed atop the grinding mortar that he had overturned with all his strength, feeding butter to the monkeys. Astonished by this, she smiled softly. Vishwanath points out in his commentary to this section of the Bhagavatam where the Lila narrative is given that he says the following: understanding that this was the work of her son, she put her forefinger to her nose and began laughing. Sanatan says, Not seeing him there, she laughed because it displayed his fickle nature, his skill in breaking it, or because he had fled in fear. She quietly pursued him on her tiptoes. Snigdha continues, she quietly crept up behind her guilty son. By nature, monkeys are proud of exhibiting their strength, but today their bellies were fully satisfied. So when they saw Mother Yaśodā advancing, wooden stick covered with cloth, they immediately scampered up the nearby trees. Thus, this alerted Krsna to what was happening, and he also fled. Seeing her son fleeing, Mother Yaśodā broke into a run and began to chase him. A shower of flowers fell from her braid. "O King of Thieves," she loudly called, "where are you going? Stop, stop." Hearing this, Sri Krishna uttered a faint cry, and a smile appeared on his face, enchanting his beauty. Mother Yaśodā ran quickly after him. Although she came close, she could not catch him. Jiva Goswami comments in his Bhagavatam commentary there. This is the Vaishnava Toshani, of which there are two, one presented by Sanatan Goswami and one presented by Jiva Goswami, all for the pleasure of the Vaishnavas, Vaishnava Toshani, Brihat and Lagu, respectively. So from Jiva's Toshani, we hear the following. From fear of crows and other animals, he sat in swastika asana on an overturned mortar. After going into the storeroom and eating some butter, he took the pot, which had been hanging from a rope, indicating his cleverness, and went behind the house by the back door to a solitary spot to fool his mother. His mother approached from behind, so he would not see her. Little Krsna was confident, now he's running in the narrative, that his mother would never pursue him beyond the main gate, for she would then be seen running in public. Therefore, he intentionally ran in that direction. Mother Yaśodā knew that at that time of day, no one would be outside the gate, so she just kept chasing him. As long as Krsna ran without looking back, his mother was unable to catch him. But as soon as he turned his head back in fear, she caught him by his hand. He began crying in an attempt to reduce Mother Yaśodá's anger. Or out of impudence, he started trembling artificially, but he did not give up his childish pranks. Whenever she forcefully held his face so that she could look him in the eyes, Sri Krishna turned his face in such a way as to wipe the oily gloss of butter from his mouth and make it look dry. So here we see there is some little fake crying and some trembling, but these are referred to by Jiva Goswami in this narrative as being artificially put forth in attempt to settle his mother down. So we can imagine the child, and we've probably seen it in our practical experience with young children, that they can scream and yell and cry at the top of their lungs until they get what they want. And as soon as it's even shown to them, the crying abruptly stops. So this using crying and trembling to affect an end is something that Lord Krishna himself also employs in his dealings of Vatsalya Ras. Vishwanath comments, internally he had no fear, or it can mean he stood up and fled in a fearful manner. For Kunti has said, Bita bhavanayastito. He was in a state of fear. So Vishwanath is saying, well, some may say he had no fear, but Kunti said there was fear. So we must keep that in mind because she is also an authority. This is the nature of the way in which such insights are dealt with within the community of devotees, always with much gratitude and profound understanding. So Kunti's, we cannot, as devotees, discount the insights of Queen Kunti. And she said there was fear, so we must pay respects to that statement of hers. She also has her transcendental insights into this amazing Leela. Jiva says, Yasoda pursued him and caught up to him step by step. So much for her good fortune of having him sleep on her lap. Her good fortune of chasing him when he fled cannot be understood at all by the greatest yogis. She had greater fortune than all other devotees because she was able to catch him directly. So here we see Jiva, and when he writes in this Bhagavatam commentary, he's bringing in the Siddhanta. He's bringing in the relationship, the Sambandha Gyan, and this is the glory of all of our acharyas, that they blend so masterfully the Leela narrative with insights into the sadhaka's journey towards spiritual perfection. So this happens continually in the writings and the speakings and of the sadhus, and because they are so profoundly involved, cent percent, in this service of making Krishna available to others, this profound outreach. They have to themselves come down from this stage of uttama involvement, the topmost immersion in the Leelas of the Lord, to masterfully weave those Leelas with Siddhanta that allows sadhakas who are now entering into devotion, leaving the Lord's external energy and coming towards him, allowing them to advance nicely so that they can ultimately themselves have the topmost spiritual attainment. So Krishna, he's still at his pranks, wiping the butter from his mouth. So because Mother's caught him, and now he's got to deal with the situation. And the best thing is he's already hatched a plan, as we will see in the following discourse. Threatening him, Mother Yasoda said, "O Krishna, you have given me so much trouble. Before you steal from your home, first look at this stick in my hand. When she saw her lotus-eyed son's terror upon hearing these words, Sri Vrajaswari tossed the stick aside. Krishna beseeched her, "Don't beat me, mother." The queen of Vraj scolded him, "But you are a thief, a thief." Laughing to herself, she suddenly and forcefully instigated a quarrel with him. "Ah, you are the king of thieves." Krishna protected, "No, mother. Kora took birth in your dynasty, not mine. Why would we have a Kora thief in our home?" In this way, Mother Yaśodā and her butter-stealing son argued with each other. "Oh, really? Well, who broke the pot of yogurt?" she again inquired. Krishna replied, "The Supreme Lord. He was punishing you." "But," she continued, "who fed butter to the monkeys?" "He who created them." "No," she exclaimed, "I suspect that you always feast with great relish on the fresh butter we prepare for use in religious sacrifices." Mother Yaśodā scolded her son as she would a thief, but finally her heart softened. She laughed with anger and said, "Just admit your theft, give up your arrogance." Thus pressed by his mother, Sri Krishna burst into tears. "Look, Ma," he sobbed, "when you anxiously rushed to save the milk, your ankle bell struck the pot of yogurt and broke it. How is this my fault?" And the monkeys, he continued, were inspired by the Supreme Lord to sneak into the house to steal. When they began taking the butter, I caught them. What did I do wrong? And then he retorted, "The stick in your hand frightened me. So even though I am completely innocent, I fled like a thief. You saw I was not afraid, but still you mercilessly chased me, all for no reason." Mother Yaśodā spoke as if lamenting. "Oh, you are the king of those skilled in argument," she said. "You are the best of thieves. Although you are the son of Sri Vrajaraj, the most noble of men, your nature has become like a monkey's because you are fond of them." When fearful Sri Krishna heard this, he pointed to the forest and said, "If I am a monkey, then I will live in the forest," which slightly frightened Mother Yaśodā. Some commentary from the great acharyas in regards to the Leela and this section. So we see that Jiva Goswami has given us insight into a narrative between mother and son, and we see Krishna's cleverness in responding to the accusations of his mother in regards to his stealing and breaking of the yogurt pot. Prabhupada writes in his commentary in the Bhagavatam, quote, "Now I shall bind you so that you cannot commit any further offensive activities, nor for the time being can you play with your playmates. This shows the position of a pure devotee in contrast with others," meaning the pure devotee having the ability, or we would begin with the audacity to think that they could tie up the Supreme Lord. And it goes beyond that. Not only do they have the sense of doing it, that Mother Yaśodā herself is going to certainly attempt to do it. Vishwanath writes, "You have such a restless nature, friend of the monkeys, pot breaker. Where are you going to get butter today? Today I will bind you up so you cannot go and steal and eat butter with your friends. Are you afraid of being beaten with this stick?" "Don't be me." Yaśodā answered, "If you don't like getting beaten, why did you break the yogurt pot today? I won't do that anymore. But throw the stick down." The Yaśodā then began to worry. Maybe in distress, fear, or anger, he will run away. to the forest. Jiva writes in his commentary in the Bhagavatam, "O agitated boy, crybaby, greedy boy, monkey lover, thief, from now on, I will not give you butter. I will tie you up in the house so that you cannot go anywhere and play. You will not be able to see any of your friends." So all these different perspectives, all this rasa tattva, the insights into the realities of this transcendental affair between Mother Yaśodā and baby Krishna. And then Jiva's commentary in Gopal Champu continues through the lips of Snigdhakanta. "Who knows," she thought, "this arrogant boy easily put his threat into action. To keep him from running into the forest, I must tie him up. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for me to single-handedly manage my household duties and this child." I mean, she's got a mess to deal with at this point. She has not only the fact that the milk that was streaming from her own breasts was so profuse that it was all over the floor. Then in the churning room, the yogurt was all over the floor. What to speak of the mess where the butter itself was stored. So much stone was thrown about by the Lord there that the floor there was also covered with butter. So she has a lot to deal with, and we've already received some insight earlier into the mamata, the sense that Mother Yaśodā and the other residents of Braj have towards all the services that they perform, and how those services are done for the ultimate pleasure of Krishna, even if they don't appear to be directly related to his pleasure. As they say, Mother knows best. So we are also acquainted with this, that the mother and the father may do certain things for the well-being of the child, and that's their only motivation. But from the child's perspective, or from a different perspective, they may not be seen as directly related to that pleasure and maintenance of the child. Turning to Krishna, she openly said, "You thief, you restless boy, you who bewilder one and all by the charm of your flickering eyes, why don't you simply accept my prohibitions? Look, I will tie you up and then quickly return to the house. If you have any strength left, you can show it to me by trying to steal something else." As she started to bind him, his eyes became moist, and in fury he began to loudly cry out, "Oh, Mother Rohini," he shrieked, "where have you gone with my big brother? Because you are not here today, this mother is tying me up. Come quickly." So Krishna, he's using he's making appeal to others. He obviously has lost the argument, despite his best ability to put the whole incident in a perspective that made him simply innocent in all regards, that Mother Yaśodā actually broke the churning pot, that the monkeys actually stole the butter. He was innocent. Not only was he innocent, he was working for the benefit of Mother Yaśodā, trying to catch the monkeys and remove them from the house, retrieve the butter, trying. So Um, Despite all his attempts and his excellent story, it didn't stand up to the scrutiny of his mother, who could see right through it. Since Sri Rohini was far away, she could not hear his cries. But the ladies from neighboring houses who had previously complained about Krishna and who had chastised him did hear his cries. They informed each other of the fun and assembled there. As if taunting her, they reminded Sri Yasoda of their complaints. Has this thief done something mischievous in your home also? They laughed. Mother Yasoda, however, was bent on teaching her son a lesson, so she paid no heed to their remarks. Snatching a silk ribbon that had fallen from her braid, she immediately began binding her son's waist to a grinding mortar lying in the courtyard. With the same persistence it takes to bind the neck of a calf, but that silk ribbon was 2 fingers too short. So we could see that in prior encounters with the other mothers of Raj, who had been subjected to the pranks of Krishna, who would sneak into their homes and steal butter there and feed it to the monkeys, so much so that they'd lodged complaints to Mother Yasoda and said, we can't even go on. We live by the livelihood of our milk products. We're going to have to move to another community. We're going to have to leave this community because of your son. So at that time, she tried to pacify the situations. Really, couldn't you just have talked it out with him? Couldn't you have just, ask him not to do these things nicely? She made so many complaints, and they countered all of her suggestions in that regard. And now the tables turned. And now they've come and they've brought this to her attention. Oh, has this thief done something mischievous in your home? You said that he wouldn't dare do anything in our homes, but now you're seeing that perhaps our complaints were legitimate. So she, of course, didn't have time at that instant, considering the circumstances, considering all that she had to deal with within the home, and considering the reprimand that she did want to give to Krishna. She didn't have time to deal with the other ladies and stand up for Krishna's good name and reputation at that time. So she proceeds to bind Lord Krishna. Observing this, the ladies of Raj laughed and remarked, "Oh, Vrajaswari, we already told you that this boy surely has some extraordinary illusory potency. On account of it, he even surpasses Kafalak, the foremost among thieves. He seems to be satisfied simply by eating stolen goods, or by such acts he delights both the donors of those goods and the enjoyers of them. He is gradually gaining quite a reputation as one who steals others' possessions." So they're kind of rubbing it in, and Mother Yasoda responded, "What does this recently born child know about being a thief? He does not know good from bad, but it seems that you are the ones who have some evil trickery. Although you actually favor him, externally you behave in a contrary way. So she's a little bewildered here, and she's wondering, is there some sorcery going on, or is there some spell that these other ladies are putting on this situation? I should be able to tie him up with this ribbon from my hair, and I can't. And it doesn't make sense. The ribbon is certainly long enough to accomplish the task. So she's pointing to them and saying, are you performing some evil trickery here? At this, the ladies laughed. Oh, respected Sri Yaśodā, they said, we take a oath at your feet that we have nothing to do with these astonishing powers. So at this point, we would enter into some discussion of the Siddhanta regarding this binding of Lord Krishna. And considering the time and the constraint of our presentation, according to time, we'll stop for now and continue here with the Siddhanta regarding this binding of Lord Krishna in our next presentation. So there will be, although Kartik itself is coming to an end later this week, for our Sangha, we are continuing through the end of the month to relish the various Lila narratives and philosophical discussions until the month of December. So I want to sincerely thank you. And if anyone has a question, I can certainly address that. And if not, I will leave in all humility. Vanchakalpatubhyascha, kripasinabheva-cha, patitadam pavanebhyo, Vaishnavijya namo namaha. Thank you so very much. Hare Krishna.
Shriman Dulal Chandra Prabhu ki jai.
Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tanapano Prema-Bhakti